Deku went from a quirkless loser to the strongest hero in the world, and it's only hope left. These are the 4 stages of Deku. Deku Stage 1. In My Hero Academia, 80% of people have a quirk. Deku was born into the 20% of people who don't have a quirk. This all changed when he ate a special piece of hair. Since then, it seems like his powers have grown faster than almost anyone else's. The base level of One For All is the part of Deku's power that people know the most about. One For All lets the user go faster, be stronger, more agile, and have more stamina and durability than a normal person. At this point, it works best on people who never had a quirk. The power's effects would overload them otherwise. Deku and All Might are the only ones who didn't have a quirk before they got One For All, so they've avoided being killed by it. Maintaining the power that comes with this quirk is very hard on the body. This is why All Might had to find a successor in the first place. Since One For All is also a quirk that can be passed on, it has continued to stockpile raw energy from all its previous owners. Deku is using the most dangerous version of the quirk. This also means Deku was given a burden his body couldn't handle. This is why he was breaking bones and damaging his organs. Overusing One For All basically caused small internal explosions that would shatter his limbs. For months, Deku couldn't use more than 20 to 30% of his power. This was mostly because he didn't have enough training and didn't know what One For All was. He didn't have time to learn how to control his superpower. Instead, he learns most things from real battles instead of training. All Might didn't tell Deku what One For All really was until the end of the first semester, a whopping 5 months after he passed down the quirk. Deku's suit eventually helps him limit the damage his body takes from using the power at any level below 100%. Controlling his power is the ultimate goal to make sure he's not forced into an early retirement. Deku Stage 2. After Deku got sick of breaking his limbs, he learned how to control parts of One For All's raw power at different percentages. This keeps him from causing damage to himself, others, and his surroundings. But it took him a while to figure out how to do this, and he still broke some bones in the process. Deku uses 5 important percentages as standards for One For All. The lowest is 5%, which is the least he needs to focus raw power on a single limb, and is the minimum Deku needs for a Detroit Smash, a technique borrowed from All Might that enhances a punch with the raw force of One For All. During his exam to join UA, this caused him to break his arm, but by the Provisional Hero License exam, he's able to increase his output to 8% without fracturing anything. This jumped up to 20% by the end of his fight with Overhaul. Before the Paranormal Liberation War, it looked like 20% was the most Deku could do without his body being damaged. 20% is also the least Deku needs to use Manchester Smash. Like most of his Smash moves, this one has the raw power of the quirk sent to one part of the body for stronger attacks. The power is moved to Deku's leg while he performs an axe kick. Compared to moves and quirks he has at Stage 4, Manchester Smash is pretty basic, but it still has its uses in battle. Deku was able to get ahead of Kai Chisaki's Overhaul quirk by landing a perfectly timed Manchester Smash on the ground. While this attack wasn't the one to take Overhaul down, he was still able to avoid one of the deadliest quirks in the series. The next 2 benchmarks for Deku are 30% and 45%. As of the Paranormal Liberation War, 30% is the maximum amount Deku can consistently use without destroying his body. His ability to use Full Cowl, spreading the power of One For All throughout his body, is most present at this level. Using 30% significantly upgrades his speed, durability, and agility. He was able to outpace the upgraded Shigaraki and withstand his attacks, both of which are on par with All Might at his peak. 45% lets Deku use moves like St. Louis Smash Air Force. St. Louis Smash detonates a vertical roundhouse kick. The 45% of One For All and the accompanying air blast create a move that sends opponents flying. If he keeps this level on for more than a few seconds, it will hurt his body. Luckily, Deku's gotten a lot better at controlling his quirks since he first started training. It doesn't cause nearly as much damage as 100%, so this form is definitely a safer bet. To combat the consequences of One For All 45%, Deku has now mastered the act of releasing One For All right before he's about to land a hit. Finally, there's the absolutely destructive One For All 100%. This is a peak of all the raw power stored over hundreds of years. Deku has to be very careful with this one. It'll immediately break whatever limb is being used and lead to permanent scarring if he continues to fight with it. Before he learned that he could actually control the output percentage of the quirk, every time Deku used his new power, it was at full output. Deku has borrowed some smash attacks from All Might. It's a set of reliable punching moves that are good for knocking around and weakening an opponent. Delaware Smash only requires the flick of a finger. but the gust of wind it produces was strong enough to destroy Shoto Todoroki's massive ice wall. It still breaks Deku's finger, but objectively, that's better than breaking an arm. The final two moves in this series are Deku Originals, used against Shigaraki during the Paranormal Liberation War. Wyoming Smash is a spike to the opponent's head that results in a powerful shockwave capable of stunning the victim. Then there's Texas Smash, a punching upgrade of Delaware Smash that produces a blast of wind so powerful that it nearly killed Shigaraki. And not just normal Shigaraki, but the almost perfect all-for-one version. We only know of two ways to make up for the damage that going all in does to Deku's body. Deku usually resorts to Full Cowl, which spreads his raw energy over his whole body instead of putting it into one weak limb. This can only handle Deku's mid-tier one-for-all levels though. Another way we've seen has been the manipulation of time. This has only happened once thanks to Eri and her quirk Rewind during Deku's battle with Overhaul. Her quirk constantly fixed any damage to her protector's body as long as he kept the fully powered one-for-all active. This allowed him to maintain his highest level of power for an extended period of time without any consequences to his body, so long as he kept a hold on Eri. His speed, strength, agility, and defenses are powered up to their max, to the point where they rival All Might at his peak. Deku Stage 3. Shoot Style, a jump kick powerful enough to create a massive air blast, is a perfect example of Full Cowl's capabilities. It lowers damage to Deku's body thanks to the higher durability of the bones and muscle structure of his legs. Delaware Smash Air Force is another move upgrade thanks to the capabilities of Full Cowl. One for All is spread across all his fingers instead of just one. With this, he can launch 4 Delaware Smashes at once. It was enough to knock out a powered up Gentle Criminal, but it didn't break his fingers. When Full Cowl is fully powered, One for All becomes one of the scariest quirks imaginable. A green aura appears around Deku as he moves, which adds a layer of intimidation that even someone like Overhaul was afraid of. Full Cowl 100% was definitely Deku's most powerful state by a wide margin, until the full capabilities of One for All reveal themselves at least. Deku Stage 4. One perk of One for All is that it's transferable. If the quirk is passed down correctly, anyone can use it. In My Hero Academia 2 Heroes, Melissa Shield's full gauntlet combined with 30% of One for All to destroy a horde of security bots without Deku causing any damage to his body. Bakugo also used One for All briefly in My Hero Academia Heroes Rising to take down All for One's backup protege, 9. This brings up an interesting new part of the quirk. This means it's possible to pass One for All back and forth between users without affecting either the holders or the temporary users' quirks or bodies too much. Again, a facet of One for All that has become very important over the last few arcs is stockpiling quirks. Hoarding raw power is a key concept of One for All, but secretly, it can also stockpile quirks of previous users. Since the first user Yoichi Shigaraki's quirk is a transferring capability, that means there are 6 extra quirks available to Deku. Because of the raw power stored in One for All, these quirks have also mutated to become stronger. Deku's newest stage is his most powerful because he can use all of these quirks. All Might couldn't even do that. His abilities have also become greatly improved. He can even merge these stockpile quirks together to create new mega quirks. Float, inherited from Shimura Nana, lets him float and fly through the air. This has mostly been used as a fast way to get around, but it's also a great way to defend, especially when fighting bigger enemies like Muscular. Gear Shift is the one he uses the least since it's one of the oldest quirks the series has introduced and the oldest added quirk to One for All. It's had a lot of time to mutate and grow stronger. What began as an ability akin to a pea shooter has become a crazy, reality warping quirk. So the unnamed second user has made it clear that this quirk should only be used as a last resort. It helped in Deku's rematch with Shigaraki since it delayed sound waves and hid part of Deku's attacks. Gear Shift also enhances the power and speed behind punches, making moves like Detroit Smash even more devastating. Danger Sense, much like the Spidey Sense, grants Deku the ability to sense when there are threats near him. He can also sense negative emotions and bad intent from his opponents. This is the first inherited quirk to develop a weakness from mutating. The worst side effect is a super strong migraine if activated for too long. And Lady Nagan, despite having her sneak attacks detected, exposed Deku's vulnerability to extreme speeds. If a projectile approaches him faster than he can react, there isn't much he can do. And if an opponent has ulterior motives, like an obsessive undying love, Danger Sense isn't triggered at all. This isn't usually a problem for Deku, but whenever Toga comes on the scene, it becomes a major weakness. With Smokescreen, Deku can send out a cloud of purple smoke to make it hard for opponents to see him. If everything goes well, this is a great way for Deku to defend himself and get the jump on any targets in the area. since the smoke covers so much. But it has no offensive potential, and without practice, the user can emit too much of the smoke and obscure their own vision in the process. Still, it's very effective when combined with Deku's other quirks. Black Whip was inherited from the 5th user, Daigoro Banjo. It lets Deku use tendrils of black energy that look like whips and can be used for a lot of different things. Deku's been very creative with Black Whip by creating moves like Froppy style, where he releases a single tendril from his mouth and uses it like Suyu Asui does with her tongue. This was the first inherited quirk to show up, so Deku has had a lot more time to get good with it. The power levels of this quirk rise even further based on Deku's emotions. And since anger is most effective, Deku is at his most powerful when he's upset. This is perfect because he's always been such an emotional person. Fajin, formerly wielded by the 3rd user, builds up kinetic energy, the kind of energy gained through movement to be released in large bursts. This is a power made for combinations, but it's also pretty useful on its own. It allows Deku to use a faux 100%. This is the equivalent of One For All Full Cow 100%, but is much safer on his body. By using a combination of Fajin and only 45% of One For All, Deku can execute moves at the exact same speed he'd be able to at full power, as well as special moves. We've seen him use faux 100% Manchester Smash, but can assume this faux treatment applies to all his other attacks too. All of these abilities don't just play well with the raw power of One For All, they can combine with each other as well. These were used a lot in his fight against Lady Nagan, a former pro hero and the closest thing to an assassin the main series has seen, and his rematch with the newly upgraded Shigaraki. Without using these combo mega quirks, Deku wouldn't have been as much of a threat to either of these characters. The best thing about these combined quirks is that they give Deku more ways to attack. One For All is best for close combat, but it isn't always the best in every circumstance. Combining quirks has given him access to a lot of long-range and offensive moves that keep him safe or give him advantages he wouldn't have had before. This point in Deku's growth is by far his strongest, most flexible, and best fit for the situation he's in at this point in the story. There's still a lot of places for Deku's power to go. We've yet to explore a majority of the inherited quirks' effects in battle. Since these inherited quirks have constantly grown in power and mutated the longer they've been stored, Deku could go wild with the variety and intensity behind each mega quirk. Maybe we'll even see Deku reach a final form with all the mega quirks active at once. There's still more to explore with One For All in its base form as well. Deku can use 30% of the quirk's raw power at a time without hurting himself. After that, his body starts to break down. Between the risky ceiling of 45% and the full power of One For All, there is a huge gap. Maybe Deku can use even more special moves in the part of his base quirk that hasn't been explored yet. And who knows how his inherited quirks might be affected. Deku's 5th stage will see him pull out all the stops and take One For All to a whole new level of power. In our 6 stages of Toga video, we look at how she went from a normal girl to a country-destroying monster.